Alex Walker always believed he knew his company inside out. After all, he had founded Walker Tech from scratch, building it with sweat, sleepless nights, and a clear vision of innovation. At 38, he was the face of one of the most successful tech companies in the country. In recent years, his routine had become an endless sequence of meetings, negotiations, and strategic decisions, distancing him more and more from the day-to-day activities and the people who made the company function. One afternoon, Alex was sitting in his spacious and modern office at the top of Walker Tech's headquarters. The view of the city was impressive, and the sophisticated, well-organized space reflected his management style, precise, efficient, with no room for errors. He was reviewing performance reports when something caught his attention. The latest organizational climate analysis showed a sharp drop in employee engagement, and Alex, surprised, saw a term that made him shiver: disconnect from leadership. Alex felt a weight in his chest as he read those words. How could he be disconnected from his own team? He remembered how, in the early years, he used to walk through the halls, greet everyone, and show interest in the lives of his employees. Now, he barely recognized the new faces and rarely had time for casual conversations. An unsettling idea began to form in his mind. Had he distanced himself so much that he no longer knew what was really happening inside his company? Determined to understand what was going on, Alex came up with a plan that was, to say the least, unconventional. He was going to disguise himself as a janitor at Walker Tech for a week. Michael, the new janitor, would start his job on Monday. He wanted to observe the company from the inside out, understand what his employees truly thought, and, more importantly, discover how he had lost control of the culture he so cherished. That night, Alex went home determined, but the idea of going undercover made him feel a bit uncomfortable. What if he discovered that people genuinely didn't like him? Or worse, what if he realized that the company he had built with so much effort had turned into a place where even he didn't want to work? When the day came to start his disguise, Alex looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the image he saw. Wearing a simple janitor's uniform, a cap and fake glasses, he felt strangely vulnerable. Without the confident posture and elegant clothes that characterized him, Alex seemed ordinary. He took a deep breath, ready to step into the role of Michael and uncover the truth behind every smile and glance he received in the elevator, hallways, and cafeteria. As he entered the building for the first time as a janitor, Alex noticed something he had never seen before: indifference. Unlike the treatment he always received as CEO, no one even lifted their heads to greet him. The looks passed over him as if he were invisible, and a strange sense of isolation enveloped him. He remembered Sarah, the friendly receptionist who always smiled at all visitors. That day, as he walked past the reception, her smile was absent. Alex began his first shift cleaning the common areas, pushing a cart with cleaning supplies, a duster, and a mop. He kept his head down and his ears open, trying to pick up conversations and understand the employees' routines without drawing attention to himself. That was when he overheard a group chatting near the water cooler. "This new project is going to be a disaster. Just wait and see," said a man Alex identified as John from the marketing department. Nobody ever knows what Alex really wants, and Mike just does everything to please him. We're lost in this ego battle. Alex felt a knot in his stomach. Mike, the general manager, was someone he trusted to keep the team aligned and motivated. But the way John spoke, with sarcasm and frustration, suggested otherwise. Alex kept cleaning calmly, pretending not to listen but paying close attention to every word. "I'd love to see Alex spend a day in our shoes," John continued, laughing derisively. "Bet he wouldn't last a morning. He only shows up to give us a hard time or push impossible targets. The guy's a legend, but only from afar. Get close, and you just see the cold boss who doesn't care. These words echoed in Alex's mind as he continued his work. What else would he discover over the course of that week? Was this view of a distant boss shared by everyone? And what role did Mike play in all of this? He didn't know yet, but he was about to find out much more than he ever imagined. Alex's first day as Michael, the janitor, ended with many unanswered questions and an uncomfortable feeling in his chest. John's words echoed in his mind as he headed home. For the first time, he realized that his presence at the company had a different effect than he imagined. It wasn't just the respect and admiration he thought he inspired. There was fear, frustration, and, above all, a huge distance between him and his team. The next morning, Alex returned to the Walker Tech building early, before most employees arrived. He felt like a spy in his own company, hiding in plain sight. His intention was not to betray the employees' trust, but to understand the root of the problems he himself, apparently, couldn't see from the top. As he adjusted his uniform and checked the cleaning cart, he noticed Mike entering the building, talking on the phone and smiling, as always. Mike was charismatic, a great communicator, and known for maintaining good relationships with everyone. He seemed to be the kind of manager any company would want. However, Alex couldn't ignore what John had said the day before, that Mike used his position to manipulate and please, more interested in maintaining control than motivating the team. During that morning, Alex roamed the halls of Walker Tech, cleaning and reorganizing the common areas, but always attentive to the conversations around him. It was then, as he passed by the hallway near the break room, that he heard a dialogue that made him stop and listen. "Ah, man, you won't believe this," said a familiar voice. It was Paul, the IT technician. "Mike is delaying the installation of the new security software again. I told him it's going to cause problems, but he's only interested in cutting costs to impress the boss at the next meeting." "And what does Alex think about this?" asked another voice, which Alex didn't recognize. "Oh, Alex! He doesn't even know about these things. Mike paints the situation as if everything's under control. I bet Alex thinks everything is going according to plan." Paul sighed. "Sometimes I think the problem isn't Mike, but how much he's been allowed to take over everything." Alex felt a wave of shock. Is this what employees thought of him, that he didn't know what was truly going on in the company? While in the role of Michael, he couldn't intervene. But what he heard made him reflect on how he had distanced himself from the direct management of various important issues, blindly trusting Mike. Continuing his shift, Alex went to the janitor's room to take a break. As he took a sip of water, Sarah walked in, talking on the phone. She was visibly worried, her voice low and tense, unlike her usual cheerful tone. Mom, I know you want me to ask for a promotion, Billy, but it's not that simple. Mike is the one who decides who advances here, and he doesn't like me. He makes that pretty clear. I'll keep trying, but I just want to feel secure in my job." Sarah sighed before hanging up, and Alex could see the exhaustion in her eyes as she finally sat down. This was a completely different Sarah from the one he knew at the reception desk, where she always appeared cheerful and composed. She seemed tired, discouraged, and, above all, resigned to the situation. Alex felt a pang of guilt, realizing that, somehow, he had allowed this environment to become hostile to people like Sarah, who just wanted a fair chance. Throughout the day, Alex continued observing, and on several occasions, he caught Mike in conversations that revealed his manipulative side. He was always friendly and helpful in front of other managers, but he never missed an opportunity to make disparaging comments about Alex and the company's direction to the staff. Alex began to notice a pattern. Mike created a narrative in which he, the manager, was the defender of the team's interests, while Alex was the distant, impersonal villain. At the end of the day, Alex was in the service area cleaning the hallways when he once again heard voices approaching. He bent down slightly to avoid being noticed, discreetly watching as a group of employees gathered for a quick chat. "Did you hear the latest from Mike?" said a woman with a nervous laugh. "He said that if the targets aren't met, Alex will come down here and fire everyone personally. Imagine that scene." "I don't know if I believe that, but sometimes it feels like Mike does everything to make sure we're scared of Alex, you know?" commented a middle-aged man, shaking his head. "Everything is blamed on the boss, but the truth is that Mike seems to love seeing us in panic." Alex stood there, absorbing every word. It hit him like a punch to the gut. He knew his public image was that of someone strict and demanding, but he had no idea his absence and silence were being used against him in this way. Mike was, in practice, controlling the entire company's perception of who Alex was as a leader. And cunningly, he was creating a culture of fear and dependence that kept everyone under his control. That night, Alex reflected on what he had seen and heard. He could no longer ignore what was happening. Mike wasn't just a management issue. He was a barrier that was poisoning the atmosphere at Walker Tech. But the solution wouldn't be simple. It wasn't just about confronting Mike. It was about understanding how he, Alex, had allowed this to happen. He would need more time as Michael to ensure he knew exactly what to do when the time came to act. By the end of the second day, Alex was more determined than ever. He was beginning to see the corrosive effects that toxic leadership could have on team morale and company efficiency. And the worst part was knowing that he, even if indirectly, had contributed to this by distancing himself from the day-to-day reality. But there was still much to be discovered, and Alex was far from giving up. On the third day of his journey as a janitor, Alex was starting to perceive Walker Tech's internal dynamics in a completely different way. What he had thought to be a vibrant and collaborative company was, in fact, operating under a veil of tension and uncertainty. The conversations he overheard were not just occasional rants. They revealed a deep-rooted culture of fear and manipulation. And once again, Mike was a constant presence, always orbiting around the employees, discontent, exploiting it to consolidate his influence. Alex decided to start that day by focusing on a place he had previously avoided, the break room. It was there that employees seemed most comfortable talking openly, and it was there that he hoped to find more concrete clues about the real impact of Mike's management. As he entered the room carrying a cloth and a spray bottle, he noticed a small group of employees gathered, speaking in hushed tones. "The problem is that no one has the courage to say anything," said a woman with short hair and a serious expression. "Who's going to want to confront Mike? He's untouchable. And Alex." She hesitated, lowering her voice even further. "It's as if he doesn't even exist. He only shows up to approve Mike's decisions." "To us, it doesn't matter. I tried once," replied Paul, who was in the group, with a bitter smile. "I made an anonymous complaint about Mike. You know what happened? Nothing. There was never a response. No change. It seems that for Alex, Mike is an exemplary employee, and we're the incompetents who can't keep up." Alex nearly stopped breathing. A complaint. This was something he had never known. Why hadn't it reached him? And how had Mike managed to cover up something so serious? He knew he needed answers, but his disguise limited his ability to act. He had to keep listening, observing, and find a way to access that information later when he was back in his role as CEO. While cleaning the tables, Alex noticed Sarah approaching. She smiled at the group and sat down, looking relieved to finally be able to relax a bit. He saw this as an opportunity to understand more about her, especially after hearing her on the phone with her mother the previous day. "Any news about the coordinator position?" one of her colleagues asked, looking at Sarah expectantly. Sarah shook her head and shrugged. "Nothing. Mike just said it's not the right time. I think we all know what that means. He probably has someone in mind, likely one of his favorites. There was a bitter laugh from the group, and Alex felt tempted to ask who these favorites were. But he knew he couldn't take that risk. He continued cleaning, trying to appear disinterested but attentive to every word. "This is ridiculous, Sarah," said Paul, with a tone mixing frustration and anger. "You're more qualified than anyone he's going to put in that position. But as long as Alex lets Mike do whatever he wants, nothing is going to change, and we're all just tiptoeing around, afraid to do anything that might upset the boss." Paul's words hit Alex like a blow to the stomach. He couldn't deny the impact it had on his pride, but he knew that if he really wanted to help, he needed to face these criticisms head-on. It was hard to admit, but his absence and focus on strategies and expansion had created a void. Mike had filled that space, but in the worst possible way. As he contemplated this, Alex observed Mike entering the room, displaying his usual smile and drawing everyone's attention. He began casually chatting with the group, but there was a clear subtext in his words. He joked, teased, and made comments that seemed innocent. But Alex now saw how much control and manipulation were hidden in each phrase. When Mike mentioned something about a new project, everyone in the group fell silent, looking more tense. "Look, folks, I know things are tight," Mike said in an almost paternal tone. "But we're doing everything we can to keep everything on track. We just need to be patient and, of course, keep doing our best, right? After all, we know how Alex is about results." He shot an ironic glance, followed by some uncomfortable laughs. Alex felt his blood boil, but he kept his composure. He needed more evidence. He needed to see how far this manipulation went and how he could expose it. It was clear that Mike was using Alex's figure as a constant threat, distorting his image to maintain control over the employees. It was as if Mike had become the official voice of the company, and Alex was a ghost mentioned only to scare. After that meeting in the break room, Alex decided he needed to be more proactive. At the end of the day, while performing one of his tasks on the administrative floor, he was fortunate enough to see Mike and a supervisor talking in a more secluded corner. Seizing the opportunity that no one was paying attention, he positioned himself so he could hear without being noticed. "That promotion for the coordinator position, are you going to give it to Sarah?" the supervisor asked. "Not a chance. She's too idealistic, let's say," Mike replied with a short laugh. "I need someone who understands how things work here, and Sarah has this habit of doing everything correctly. That doesn't work in practice, you know, but she has the qualifications." "Qualifications aren't everything, my friend." Mike gave a pat on the other man's shoulder. "What matters is knowing who's on our side and who isn't. And Sarah, well, she's good for smiling at the reception, and that's about it." A chill ran down Alex's spine. Mike not only disregarded the employee's competencies, but also decided who advanced in the company based on his personal network of favors and loyalties. This was what was poisoning Walker Tech, and Alex knew that without immediate action, everything he had built could crumble from the inside out. By the end of the third day, Alex had heard enough to grasp the depth of the problems that needed to be solved. Mike was charismatic, yes, but he was also a cunning manipulator who had built a control network affecting all important decisions. And Alex, without realizing it, had allowed this to happen by distancing himself and letting Mike take charge. Before leaving the building that night, Alex made a decision. He still had a few days left as Michael, the janitor, but he knew he needed to act soon. He had discovered enough to be sure that Mike could no longer remain in charge. However, the bigger challenge would not only be confronting Mike, but also regaining the trust of the employees and showing them that he, Alex Walker, was willing to change and correct his mistakes. Time was running out, and Alex knew he needed to use the next few days to gather more evidence and formulate a clear plan. It wouldn't be easy, but if there was one thing he had learned over the years, it was that nothing valuable is built without facing difficulties. He only hoped that when the moment arrived, he could do things in a way that truly transformed Walker Tech for the better. On the fourth day, as Michael, the janitor, Alex woke up with a different feeling. The anger he had felt in recent days had transformed into determination. He had discovered more than he had imagined, and what he needed now was to find a way to use this information to expose Mike without causing a general uproar in the company. Alex knew that a direct confrontation could end up reinforcing Mike's power over the team, but he also couldn't wait any longer. Things needed to change, and fast. That morning, Alex decided that his disguise still had a crucial role to play. He headed back to the office, passing by the same employees who didn't give him a second glance. This time, he began his shift cleaning the hallways near the IT room, where he hoped to find Paul. He knew that the IT technician was an important piece in the puzzle. Paul seemed to be one of the few who wasn't afraid to speak the truth, even if his previous attempts to report Mike had been unsuccessful. Alex found Paul adjusting some cables in one of the server rooms. He entered discreetly, pretending to clean the shelves while trying to strike up a conversation. "Looks like you're always busy, huh?" Alex said, trying to sound casual. Paul smiled, unaware he was talking to the CEO himself. "Oh, there's always something to do around here, especially when there are people who think they can decide what happens and ignore suggestions that could greatly improve our work. And who suffers? All of us." Alex realized Paul was talking about Mike, even without mentioning his name directly. He needed to earn the technician's trust, even in his disguise as a janitor. "I know how it is. Sometimes it feels like certain people have control over everything, and we just follow orders, right?" He threw out the bait, and Paul seemed to bite. "Exactly." Paul sighed, visibly frustrated. "I've tried to make some changes. I even tried to alert Alex Walker himself, but nothing reached him. And Mike, it's like he's the real boss. He decides who moves up, who stays where they are, and who should be silent." Alex felt a mix of pride and sadness. It was good to know Paul cared enough to try, but difficult to accept that he himself had been so distant that he allowed Mike to monopolize everything. "That seems unfair," Alex said, lowering his voice. "But what if someone tried to do something about it, like gathering evidence, testimonies? Would that help?" Paul raised his eyes, surprised by the suggestion. "Look, if someone could prove what's happening, it would be a good start. But no one wants to risk their job, you know. And some people think that even if they spoke up, Alex wouldn't do anything, because he's never around." Those words hit Alex like a direct blow. His absence had generated not only a leadership vacuum, but also a lack of hope. He needed to change that perception, but first, he needed the evidence. After their conversation, Alex returned to the janitor's room, reflecting on everything. He was starting to piece together a plan. He needed a way to document Mike's actions without raising suspicion, and Paul could be a key player in that. By late afternoon, Alex received an unexpected opportunity. He was cleaning the windows in the hallway near the conference room when he saw Mike entering with a group of managers. They looked excited, discussing a presentation for the results meeting that would take place on Friday, an event Alex normally presided over. He realized this would be an excellent chance to observe how Mike behaved when he thought he was in complete control. That night, Alex decided that for the meeting, he couldn't be Michael, the janitor. He needed to be present as Alex Walker, the CEO, and he had to be prepared for any reaction from Mike. What he had to do, however, was ensure that everyone saw what he was about to discover and that the employees understood he was willing to listen and act. The next morning, Alex arrived still disguised and headed straight for the IT room. He found Paul and, after making sure no one was around, finally decided to reveal himself. "Paul, I know this will sound strange, but I need you to trust me." He took off the cap and fake glasses, exposing his face. I'm Alex Walker." For a moment, Paul stood still, staring at Alex as if he couldn't believe it. The look of shock was evident, and for an instant, Alex feared he would run away, or worse, denounce him. But after a long silence, Paul finally smiled, a grin that was part disbelief and part relief. "I knew something was off about you," he said, laughing. "But why are you doing this?" Alex quickly explained his intention to understand the reality of the company and everything he had seen and heard over those days. Paul listened attentively, and by the end, he nodded slowly. "I didn't know you cared this much, to be honest," said Paul. "But I believe in you. If I can help, I'm in." With that, Alex and Paul formulated a plan. They would use the results meeting to present subtle evidence of what Mike had been doing. Alex wanted Mike to have the chance to explain himself, but without the opportunity to manipulate the facts. They prepared a technical report, highlighting the overlooked failures, and Paul ensured that all the data was ready to be presented at the meeting. When the day of the presentation arrived, Alex was more prepared than ever. Dressed in his usual smart suit, he entered the conference room and greeted all the managers, including Mike, who looked surprised to see him there. "Alex," Mike said, clearly nervous, "I didn't expect you to be here so early." Alex smiled, a controlled smile. "I thought it would be important to be here. Seems like we have a lot to discuss." The tension in the room was palpable. Mike began the presentation with his usual charisma, talking about recent successes and future projections, but Alex could see the subtle distortions in the data, the omissions that masked the truth. When Mike finished, Alex stood up and grabbed one of the reports Paul had prepared. "Excellent presentation, Mike. However, there are a few things I'd like to clarify before we conclude." He began questioning Mike about specific issues, confronting him with data that contradicted the narrative presented. Mike tried to argue, but Alex didn't leave any openings. Each word was calculated to expose what had been distorted or omitted. The atmosphere in the room changed drastically. Mike seemed to have lost the confidence he had displayed minutes before, and for the first time, it was clear to everyone that Alex knew exactly what was happening. "You know, Mike," Alex said after a long pause, "I realized that I trusted you too much to lead the team, and I see now that that trust was misplaced. I'm realizing we need to reevaluate a lot in how we manage this company, and that starts today." Mike tried to interrupt, but Alex wouldn't allow it. He looked at each of the attendees in the room, making sure his words were understood. "You all deserve a workplace where leadership listens and supports, and I commit to making that happen. I know I made mistakes, but I am willing to correct them and rebuild the trust that has been lost. And for that, we will start re-evaluating all management practices, starting right here." Mike's eyes widened, and he attempted to speak, but Alex interrupted him, addressing Paul and the rest of the team. "I want everyone to know that you can come to me with your concerns and suggestions. We are changing the rules from now on, and there will be no room for manipulation games." The air in the conference room felt heavy after Alex's declaration. Mike, who had always controlled the narrative, was clearly out of his comfort zone. He maintained a tense smile, trying to keep his composure, but Alex could see through the mask. For the first time, the manager was cornered, and everyone present could perceive that, "Alex, I think you're misinterpreting the situation," Mike began, his voice carrying a tone he probably thought was conciliatory. "My only goal has always been to ensure that Walker Tech operates as effectively as possible. If there's been any misunderstanding, we can resolve this calmly and discreetly." The word discreetly resonated in the room, like an attempt by Mike to control the damage. He still believed he could get away with it, that Alex might just be demonstrating authority. But Alex knew the problem was much deeper, and this time, he wouldn't let himself be deceived. "Mike, I trusted you to help lead this company," Alex said, keeping his tone firm yet calm. But what I discovered in the last few days goes far beyond misunderstandings. I'll be clear, the culture you've created here is toxic, and I cannot allow it to continue. So yes, we will resolve this, but it will be in an open manner, and everyone here will understand what is truly happening. Mike tried to retort, but this time Alex was ready. He gestured for Paul, who was sitting at the table, and Paul began to project a report on the screen showing a pattern of decisions Mike had made over the last few months. Must expenses, selective cuts that favored certain groups, projects deliberately delayed to increase costs, and then justify drastic measures. It was all there, clear and documented. A profound silence filled the room as the data was presented. Some of the managers exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly aware that they were witnessing something they would have preferred to ignore. Alex seized the opportunity to continue. For a long time, I allowed daily management to fall into your hands, Mike. And while I focused on the company's growth, I trusted that you were doing what was best for everyone. But now I see that you were using that trust to manipulate situations to your advantage. You used my name as a threat and created an environment where people were afraid to speak the truth. Mike, sensing he was losing control, finally stood up. His tone was now defensive, almost desperate. "This is absurd," he shouted. "Do you think it's easy managing all these departments? If I made tough decisions, it was because I needed to. Someone had to do it. And yes, I did what I thought was best to protect the company. And to protect you, Alex, because you're never here to see what really happens." Mike's outburst reverberated through the room, and for a moment, no one dared to move. But Alex, unflinching, took a step forward, his eyes locked on Mike's. "Protect the company or protect yourself?" he asked, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. "I heard what you say about me when you think I'm not around. I heard how you distort situations so that everyone thinks I'm the villain, so they fear me and depend on you. That's not leadership, it's control. And that's why you will no longer be part of this company." Shock coursed through the room. Mike opened his mouth as if to protest, but nothing came out. He seemed incapable of accepting what he was hearing. Never, not for a second, had he imagined that Alex would take such a direct stance and, more importantly, that he would expose everything so clearly and publicly. "I won't repeat myself, Mike," Alex said now without hesitation. "Walker Tech will undergo a complete restructuring, and that starts today. I want everyone to understand that this is not a place for power games, manipulation, or fear. I've made mistakes, and I'm here to correct them, but you, Mike, will no longer have a role in this." Paul, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke calmly, but with conviction. "Alex, there's something I'd like to add." He turned to the other managers. "Many of you know I tried to raise awareness about certain practices, and I was never heard. This isn't just Mike's fault, it's all of ours for preferring not to see what was happening. We have a choice now, to change and help build a better place, or to keep pretending everything is fine until it's too late." Paul's words resonated powerfully because he wasn't a high-ranking executive or someone with significant power in the company. He was essentially the voice of those who had always felt oppressed and ignored. Alex saw the sincerity in his eyes and felt a wave of pride. He was not alone in this change. There were people who genuinely cared and were willing to fight for the company's well-being. Mike, on the other hand, was still trying to process what was happening. He looked around, searching for support in the faces of the managers who used to back him, but found only cold or averted gazes. The illusion of power he had built was quickly disintegrating. "This isn't fair," he mumbled weakly. "I gave everything for this company. It's not unfair, it's necessary." Alex cut him off. "Because Walker Tech is not just a company, it's a place where people should feel safe, respected, and heard. And while you were here, that was not possible. But now we will ensure that this changes." Alex gestured to one of the security personnel at the door, who discreetly approached Mike. Still in disbelief, the manager was escorted out of the room without another word. The moment was laden with a strange sense of relief, as if everyone had been waiting for this, but didn't believe it would actually happen. Once Mike was gone, Alex took a deep breath and looked at the still dazed faces of the managers and employees present. "I know many of you have fears and doubts about Walker Tech's future," he began, his voice now softer. "And I understand that I have fears too, but I want to make one thing clear. I am here to build an environment that we can all be proud to call our own. To do that, I need you to trust me, just as I promised to listen to and respect each one of you." There was a moment of silence, and then, unexpectedly, someone began to applaud. It was Paul. Soon others joined in, and the room filled with applause. Alex felt a profound emotion, knowing those applause were not for him as a perfect leader, but for a new beginning, a chance to start over. "Thank you, everyone," he said, raising his hand to silence the room. "I will need all of you for this change, and I want you to know that my office doors are open. From now on, you will have a safe space to share your ideas, concerns, and suggestions. Together, we will build a better Walker Tech." When the meeting ended, Alex felt relieved. He knew this was just the beginning of a long and difficult process, but he also knew he was on the right path. He passed through the desks and hallways that afternoon, now as Alex Walker and no longer as Michael, the janitor, receiving greetings, smiles, and even words of encouragement from people he had never noticed before. It wasn't the end, but a new beginning, and Alex was determined to make it work. Alex's decision to expose Mike and restructure Walker Tech was a turning point. In the days following the meeting, there was a mix of reactions in the company. Some employees felt relieved, while others remained apprehensive, uncertain about what this change really meant. For Alex, however, there was one certainty: he needed to win back his team's trust, and that would only be possible if his actions spoke louder than his words. Alex began his changes in a practical and straightforward manner. In the following days, he organized small meetings with each team, without the typical formality of corporate meetings. He wanted to hear everyone's stories, understand their concerns, and, above all, show that he was present and accessible. Not as the distant CEO they had learned to fear, but as someone who truly cared about the people who made Walker Tech work. The first of these meetings was with the reception team, where Sarah worked. As soon as Alex entered the room, he saw Sarah sitting nervously, her hands clasped in her lap. He recalled the conversation he had overheard her having on the phone, speaking about her frustration and lack of growth opportunities. Alex smiled at her, trying to break the tension. "Sarah, I wanted to thank you for all the work you do here. I know the company depends on people like you to function well, and I want you to know that I'm aware of your efforts." Alex paused, observing the surprise in her eyes. "If there's anything you'd like to discuss, any suggestion or concern, I'm here to listen." Sarah hesitated, looking at her colleagues in the room before finally lifting her eyes to meet Alex's. "I just want a fair chance to show what I can do," she said, her voice firm but betraying an underlying nervousness. "I want to grow in the company, learn more. But, with all due respect, it seems like some opportunities never reach us, and sometimes I wonder if it's worth continuing to try." Alex nodded, understanding the depth of what she was saying. Sarah wasn't just asking for a promotion. She was asking for an environment where she could feel valued and respected. He remembered how Mike had ridiculed her aspirations, and that reinforced his determination. "Sarah, I heard you," Alex said calmly, "and I promise I will do my best to ensure everyone here has the same opportunities to grow. I will need time to reorganize some things, but I've already started working on it, And if you have ideas on how we can improve this process, I would love to hear them." Sarah smiled, a shy but genuine smile. It was a small moment, but for Alex, it was an important step. He knew he wouldn't regain everyone's trust all at once, but that type of interaction could begin to change how people perceived him. Alex also made a point to talk to Paul privately. The IT technician had proven to be a key ally, and Alex wanted to reward him for his courage in speaking up when many chose silence. Paul, I know I can't change what happened in the past, but I want to thank you for what you did," Alex said, shaking Paul's hand firmly. "You not only helped me see what was wrong, but you also showed me what it means to be a true leader. That's why I'd like to offer you a new position on the IT team, one that allows you to help define how our company handles issues of transparency and security. I think we need someone with your sense of justice for that." Paul looked visibly surprised and emotional. He had accepted that his attempts for change would probably never bear fruit. But now, facing that offer, he felt valued in a way he had never imagined. "Thank you, Alex. I don't even know what to say," Paul replied, smiling. "I just want to do the right thing, and knowing that you're willing to change things for real gives me hope." The conversations continued over the next few days, each bringing forth a new aspect that needed to be corrected. Alex realized that many of the toxic practices Mike had implemented were deeply rooted and would not be resolved simply by his removal. It would require a complete re-evaluation of Walker Tech's corporate culture. So, he decided to bring in experts to help with the restructuring, creating an environment where feedback was encouraged and, more importantly, where everyone had a voice. One of the biggest surprises was seeing the effect Mike's dismissal had. For years, he had planted the idea that no one was indispensable except him. When he was finally removed, some employees expressed such great relief that they seemed almost unable to believe it was real. The atmosphere in the company began to change, slowly but noticeably. People became more open with each other, less tense, and Alex saw smiles that hadn't been there before. However, the most important change was yet to come. Alex knew he couldn't rebuild trust without admitting his own mistakes, so he organized a general meeting with all employees. The conference room was full, and there was a murmur of anticipation as everyone awaited to hear what he had to say. When Alex stepped onto the improvised stage, he took a deep breath and spoke, not as the CEO of Walker Tech, but as a leader trying to find his way. "I know some of you are surprised by everything that has happened in recent days, and that perhaps you don't fully trust what I'm trying to do," he began, his voice calm and controlled. "And, to be honest, I understand. I distanced myself from the company I built and allowed bad things to happen without realizing it. It's a mistake I will carry with me, but it's also a mistake I'm committed to correcting." There was a profound silence in the room, and Alex continued, "I want you to know that from now on, you will have a leader who is willing to listen, who will walk alongside you and not above you. I will make mistakes, that's for sure, but I promise I will always try to do what's best for this company and for each of you. And if you see something that you think can be improved, I want you to feel free to speak up. The doors are open, and I will be here to listen." He paused, waiting for a reaction. For a moment, there was a silence that seemed to stretch for hours, until someone started to applaud. Soon, the applause spread through the room, and Alex felt a genuine emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time. He knew there was a long way to go, but that moment symbolized that things could improve. In the following months, Walker Tech began to transform. New policies were implemented to ensure all employees had a direct channel to express their concerns, and Alex made it a point to be more present in the company's day-to-day activities. He learned the names of new employees, attended meetings in departments he hadn't even visited before, and even found time to talk to Sarah about her future in the company. He wanted each person to feel part of something bigger, and that no one would ever feel ignored or underestimated again. Sarah finally received the promotion she deserved, and Paul began to lead a team dedicated to improving security and internal communication systems, ensuring that nothing would be ignored or suppressed again. There were challenges, of course, and not everything was resolved overnight, but the change was visible. Alex understood that his true strength as a leader was not in his ability to command, but in his willingness to learn and grow alongside his team. He realized that being a good boss didn't just mean focusing on results and goals, but also caring for the people who helped achieve those objectives. And so, with firm and steady steps, Alex was able to transform the environment at Walker Tech. Not just into a more efficient workplace, but into a place where people felt valued and happy. He knew there would still be difficulties ahead, but now he was sure that with a committed and honest team by his side, he could face any challenge that came his way. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing to our channel and supporting us through the thanks button. Until next time.